Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Meimang Demon God, creating Spider Gwen at the beginning. Lilin travels through the world of Marvel, naturally mastering the dimension of life and becoming a unique demon god in the dimension of life. The ancestor of the mutant, Tianqi. Just a mortal and an ant, I am the immortal king of the mutant. Lilin. You are life, so life deprivation, apocalypse hiccup fart, I am the source of vitality, not getting old or dying is considered fart. Cybertron Universe Emperor. I am the master of machinery, which will eventually destroy all life, and the demon god of life is no exception. Lilin. Silicon-based life is also life, so life deprivation, the Universe Emperor turned into scrap metal. Whoever says that the demon god of life cannot kill mechanical creation's purple potato essence destruction. The world needs balance, and I will kill you to rebalance the allocation of resources in the universe. 6 infinite gems, snap your fingers, Lilin. It is still life deprivation, the infinite gem turns into powder. Being is life. What is life is not your the final say, but my the final say. What is the demon god in the dimension of life? Do you think it's a dimensional lord like Domum? Wrong, it's a conceptual god like the river god. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Good morning, Lilin Parker. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 82 Queens, New York. Lilin, who was sleeping soundly, heard the familiar call of Aunt May in her ear. Lilin. Are you awake? Don't be late today, didn't you say? I'm really looking forward to the science exhibition organized by the school today. If you're late, don't regret it. The young man who was still asleep inside suddenly opened his eyes, and the drowsiness in his eyes dissipated in an instant. The black-haired boy on the bed suddenly sat up and shouted to Aunt May downstairs. Don't worry, Aunt May. I'll come down right now. Almost as he was speaking, Lilin propped up the bed with one hand, flipped over on his side, and in the next second, his entire body flew into the air. The next second, his pajamas seemed to be taken off by an invisible pair of hands. He took off Lilin's body on his own, folded it up in mid-air, and his pajamas landed at the end of the bed. The clothes that were prepared early on the bedside table were orderly put on to Lilin before he landed safely. Lilin, who had easily finished dressing, picked up the mirror on the table and took a photo of herself who had just woken up. Perfect. It's truly me. I wake up handsome every day. Lilin is not narcissistic either. Although he is in a country where Westerners are everywhere, his face is definitely handsome, breaking the boundaries of Eastern and Western aesthetics. Combined with the confidence and sunshine on the face, it gives people a sense of affinity beyond race. This kind of affinity surpasses temperament and is the instinctive closeness of all living beings to life. This kind of affinity was even suspected by some to be whether he was a mutant with psychic abilities. Lilin certainly wouldn't admit this. His affinity, combined with the mutated superpowers bestowed by the X gene, cannot be matched. He, Lillian Parker, is a genuine ordinary person, but of course, he is slightly different from a 100% pure ordinary person by a billion points. This is a world in the Marvel Universe, and Terralin is a soul-piercing transmigrator who has been reincarnated for 18 years. The Marvel Universe, like the neighboring DC Universe, has a plethora of parallel and variant universes. Even though Lilin lived here for 18 years, it is impossible to determine which parallel universe this place belongs to. As for why did Lilin confirm that this is Marvel Universe? Anyone who has heard the story and manga of Captain America Steve Rogers striking the Hydra since childhood, and even his card surroundings, will not doubt the composition of the current universe. Moreover, Lilin has been adopted by Aunt May since childhood. Who is Aunt May? Famous May Parker, the aunt of Marvel Spider-Man Peter Parker. However, perhaps it was because it was not the official universe, or perhaps due to the writer effect in Lilin, he had never heard of Aunt May having a nephew named Peter since childhood. In other words, he replaced Peter Parker's existence and became Aunt May's only nephew. The reason Lilin said it is because he is not sure which Marvel universe the current world belongs to, which is somewhat related to the current state of his world. His Aunt May is not a version of the bully spider or the Garfield spider, but rather a manga version of the white-haired old woman. Instead, it is closer to the mature Aunt May in her 30s version of the Garfield spider. Of course, this is not an independent Spider-Man world either. As far as he knows, at least 60 years ago, Captain America was born, and the current owner of Stark Industries is still Tony Stark, who has not been kidnapped, let alone made Iron Man battle clothes to become a superhero. The Hulk has been born, but it is still on the run. This made Lilin doubt for a moment that he came into the world of cinema. But soon he denied this speculation again, simply because this world is far more complex than the movie world. Firstly, there are mutants here, which is also why Lilin's affinity was once suspected to be a mutant ability. And most importantly, he didn't see the black version of Mary Jane, MJ. Compared to a simple subordinate Marvel universe, Lilin is more inclined towards the possibility of this being a composite Marvel universe. In other words, no one can predict the future of this world, and it is possible that the virus will explode and become a zombie universe tomorrow. Sitting on the escalator on the second floor and sliding all the way to the first floor, Lilin used his biological force field to instantly complete his grooming work and sat at the table in the restaurant on the first floor. Meiman. A delicious corn pancake, thank you for Aunt May's gift. Lilin clasped his hands together, as if paying homage to a deity or Buddha, and smiled lightly to express gratitude to his own relative, who had no blood ties but was more like a blood relative. Aunt May's spatula gently kissed Lilin's profile. Good morning, Lilin. Didn't you make an appointment with Gwen? Don't let girls wait for you. Lilin, who was still fighting pancakes, raised his right hand upon hearing this and gestured okay to Aunt May. Don't worry, I am the gentleman with the most golden spirit. In this world without Peter Parker, we still need a Spider-Man. As for who is most likely. Of course, it was Lilin who replaced Peter Parker's existence. After all, the vast majority of Spider-Man in the world are surnamed Parker, and his world is no exception. The will of the universe should continue this setting. However, whether to become Spider-Man or not, Lilin has not made a decision. The three words Spider-Man are almost synonymous with tragedy. Becoming Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe almost means having to sacrifice a loved one. The vast majority of Peter's spiders in the universe sacrificed their uncle's blood, while the Dutch spider sacrificed their Aunt May's blood, and in the world of Garfield spiders, it sacrificed their girlfriend Gwen and father-in-law's blood. There are various examples everywhere, except for sacrificing blood to relatives and friends. Spider-Man is almost the perfect interpretation of the pun, failed man, almost becoming a celestial ghost and a lone star. Although Lilin is not afraid of this kind of luck and destiny statement, he also has no intention of causing trouble for himself, so he can generously reveal his identity as Spider-Man. Of course, he was able to easily surrender Spider-Man's identity and power, which is also related to his inherent power. As a traveler, Lilin is born extraordinary. Although he doesn't have the ability of cheats like systems and chat groups, he also has a natural magical power. He referred to his strength as superhuman physique, which is the red-cloaked Kryptonian from the neighboring DC universe. Of course, this does not mean that Lilin is really a Kryptonian, but his strength is almost like Superman's physique. He has hardly ever undergone any subjective specialized training. As he grows like an ordinary person, his strength, speed, endurance, reaction, and even learning abilities show incredible super growth every year, and as he ages, this enhancement becomes faster and faster. And the resulting superpowers gave him a feeling of being a superhero replica. Awakened to super hearing at the age of 10, obtained beyond visual range at the age of 11, obtained short-range fluoroscopy at the age of 12, obtained microscopic vision at the age of 13, obtained super healing at the age of 15, and awakened to the biological field at the age of 17. After more than half a year of familiarization, mastery, and development, he was even able to achieve suspended flight using a biological force field. Of course, the above superhuman physique is not the power of any Kryptonian bloodline, but a trait derived from his true power. Lilin is very clear about the essence of his power, which is a very pure power. Vitality. Chapter 2. Super Mutant Spider, Enhanced Transformation of Demon God. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On the school bus of Zhongqing High School. After getting on the car, Lilin casually picked a seat and sat down, propping his head up with one hand. He looked out the window and began to wander aimlessly. The starting point of this school bus is Zhongqing High School, which is the high school currently attended by Lilin. As for the destination of this car, it is the birthplace of Spider-Man. The Science and Technology Park of Nakagi University. Different versions of Spider-Man, of course, undergo genetic mutations and acquire spider-like superpowers only after the mutated spider bites them. But each version of the mutated spider that bit Peter Parker is different. The first version is a mutated spider in the world where the bully spider is located, which is a genetically modified spider that has undergone specific radiation mutations and combines multiple super spider genes. Peter Parker was able to acquire spider superpowers after being bitten entirely because he was lucky enough. If it were someone else, they would probably die due to failed genetic recombination. The second version is a genetically modified spider from the world where the Garfield spider is located, which was specially developed by his father based on the genes of the Parker family. Except for their descendants, if anyone else is bitten, there is only one dead end. As for the Dutch spider version, it is not described in the movie how he was bitten by mutated spiders, but it seems that there is no father scientist, so it should be closer to the luck mutation of the bully spider. The reinforcement brought by mutated spiders naturally varies depending on the world. In some worlds, Spider-Man can possess power comparable to conventional Hulks. Hey, what are you thinking? As Lilin pondered, a clear and delightful call, like a yellow warbler, appeared in his ear. Before he turned his head, a beautiful figure sat in the seat beside him. The newcomer has long golden hair draped over his shoulders and waist, blue pupils, bright eyes, white teeth, and beautiful facial features. He has a delicate and gentle face that is different from ordinary Westerners, as well as a graceful figure that makes his peers envious. Gwen Stacy is the name of the girl next to him at this moment, and she is also a girl in many Spider-Man worlds who may have entanglements with him. Of course, in this world, she is Lilin's classmate and an old childhood friend. The two of them met when they were 8 years old, and now they are so familiar that they can no longer be familiar. Of course I was thinking. Today's Gwen has become even more beautiful. Lilin, who had come to his senses, certainly wouldn't say he was thinking about Spider-Man. He immediately spoke up and praised the exquisitely dressed girl. The two of them were already acquaintances, and such straightforward praise not only did not appear rash, but also made the smile of the young girl in front of them even brighter. Did you notice? I dressed up meticulously for this afternoon's rehearsal. Gwen and 3 other girls formed a girl student band. Mary Jens, and she was the guitarist in this band. She was very dedicated to the band's rehearsal. As he talked about the band, Gwen felt like a lark and immediately leaned forward, pulling one of Lilin's arms and coquettishly saying, "Lilin, you're so good at playing instruments and have such a good voice, why don't you become the coach of our band?" The beauty of a young girl, at this moment, comes into close contact with Lilin's arm. Even through her thin clothes, he seems to be able to feel the softness and delicacy of a young girl. "I'm sorry, you know Gwen, I'm not interested in bands, and besides, I have to work, so it's really difficult for me to put my energy into the band." Seeing the girl's face turn from sunny to gloomy, Lilin pursed her lips and said accordingly, "But if a lady is willing to hire me for $1, I don't mind helping." As soon as Gwynton spoke, his worries dissipated and he smiled brightly again. "What you said? Don't lie to me." This is $20, you're my person now. Lilin smiled slightly but did not stop Gwen Shuangkuai from taking care of himself with money. When it comes to working in Lilin, the price he wants to pay is not the $1 discount given to Gwen. For orders with a salary below $10,000, he is even too lazy to pay. Upon arriving at the science park, the high school students who got off the bus were like fish in the sea, eager to immediately take risks inside the park. The teacher in charge of the team naturally won't let the students disperse. If something really happens, it's his responsibility as the team leader. Immediately, as if leading kindergarten children, let everyone queue up to enter the Science and Technology Park. The Science Park focuses on studying radiation variation, with the most famous achievement being the spider of radiation variation. There are over 32,000 species of spiders in the world, which can be divided into 3 major categories under the order of spiders. The research center selected 3 spider genes and used transgenic technology to produce these 15 super spiders. When Lilin followed the team to one of the exhibition cabinets, someone suddenly interrupted the commentary. But there are only 14 here. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at the display cabinet in front of them and indeed found that one of the transparent display cabinets was empty. Oh, that must be a researcher who used it for an experiment. A group of students nodded one after another, as they didn't care about any super spiders, so this thing was naturally forgotten in an instant. But Lilin silently looked up and saw a super spider spinning its web above her head. He can feel the vitality far superior to that of a regular spider through the induction of vitality. That is the 15th runaway super spider, and of course, the one that created Spider-Man. As Lilin looked towards the super spider above seemed to have met a destined person and slowly descended along the spider silk, targeting Lilin below. Ha, little spider. You've chosen the wrong target. The super spider, which had not yet fallen, flew an inch above Lilin's palm under the pull of an invisible force field. Even though it has a far superior physique compared to its peers, facing the force field that envelopes it, it can only be controlled by Lilin at this moment. Well, first of all, belonging. The vitality is infused into the body of the super spider, coming from a higher dimension of vitality. At the moment of union with the super spider, the concept of master-slave is completed. Lilin is the master, while super spider is the slave. Under this concept, even though it is just a spider, it bows and surrenders to Lilin like a human. And then, reinforcement. Life is an energy, and it is also an energy that can easily catalyze the evolution of life. Originally a super spider, its genes are further catalyzed by vitality, and its various abilities are 10 times stronger than just a few breaths. Finally, sculpt and change into a vest. Upon glancing at his body, which was purple-black and looked like a villainous figure of a black widow, Lilin's mind suddenly changed. Soon, this super spider transformed into white, and even its originally slightly ferocious image became much cuter and more charming. Super Spider 2.0, done. Chapter 3. Opening Binding Life Dimension. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Transforming and strengthening super spiders is just a small matter. From capturing it in Lilin to transforming it with vitality, the entire process took less than 10 seconds in an instant. But if we use modern technology to imitate the process of Lilin's transformation and strengthening, it may not take decades and it is impossible to achieve this step. This is the power of Lilin, and also the power of life. Nowadays, the super spider has become a dependent of Lilin, in other words, he can let the super spider bite whoever he wants. Even the enhanced super spider has eliminated the uncertainty in the human genes that were originally enhanced by the super spider, making it a controllable and 100% successful super gene enhanced spider. But Van Rylen is willing, he can make anyone acquire Spider-Man's superpowers, and even this superpower is much stronger than a normal Spider-Man by 10 times. However, it is clear that this reinforcement method, which has surpassed the production of Captain America's super soldier serum, has no intention of spreading. As a traveler, he finally revived the second one and came to enjoy a beautiful life. What is a beautiful life? Free-spirited, relaxed and at ease. Heroes have their own way of life, and ordinary people also have their own way of life, and there is no doubt that the former's way of life is more tiring. Lilin doesn't intend to get involved in the world of heroes and keep himself busy and exhausted. So even though Lilin possesses extraordinary strength, he has not transformed into a native of China in these years. It is only because that kind of way of life seems to ignore the rules of freedom, but in reality, it is becoming a cocoon and a target of criticism. Super Spider, lying on Lilin's shoulder, without Lilin's instructions, it is now as quiet as a dead object. Hey! Lilin, why don't you just smile and take a picture together? Gwen, like Lilin's good friend, suddenly hooked Lilin's head with one hand and pulled him towards him, then took a photo of the two with his phone in his hand. Great! Gwen didn't care at all. He almost met Lilin face to face and pulled Lilin to look at the photo he had just taken. Feeling the fragrant scent of the girl around him, Lilin couldn't help but have a thought in his heart. Perhaps this world needs a different Spider-Man, Spider-Woman. Lilin, who didn't plan to step onto the stage, looked at Gwen, who was close by but had the idea of creating a Spider-Man woman herself. Although in the vast majority of Marvel universes, it is Peter Parker or someone with the name Parker who becomes Spider-Man, this does not mean that there are no exceptions. In certain special worlds, there may still be others who become Spider-Man, and even Gwen may be one of the people who becomes Spider-Man. In this world without Peter Parker, Rylan actually believes that Gwen's becoming Spider-Man may be the best historical development direction. Go, little spider. With Lilin's thoughts, the inconspicuous super spider on Qin Yu's shoulder had already crawled onto Gwen's hand in an instant. Bite. As the super spider bit through the back of Gwen's hand, the venom in her body would be able to modify the human body's super genes and inject them into Gwen's body. This genetically modified version combines the genes of the super spider itself with the special vitality of Lilin. Although it is different from the super spider directly belonging to Lilin, Gwen, who possesses this special vitality, is also equivalent to being marked with Lilin's mark on his body. Gwen herself is naturally a free life, but when necessary, through this symbol integrated into Gwen's body, Lilin can also provide remote support to her. Ah! The venom of the super spider was not imperceptible to Gwen. The venom of the super spider had no anesthetic ingredients, and the pain in that moment made Gwen shake his hand violently. When Gwen finished shaking her hand, he looked at the place where she was bitten, and saw that the super spider was as stable as Mount Tai, firmly grasping the back of her hand and not being thrown away. When Gwen saw clearly what was biting him, the snow-white super spider, like a prodigal, easily swung away from Gwen's body using spider silk. A few body swings disappeared before Gwen's eyes, to the point where Gwen didn't even have time to stop the super spider. Are you okay, Gwen? Faced with Lilin's concern, Gwen could only shake his head after listening. Being bitten by a spider, she naturally worried about the possibility of being poisoned, but after being bitten, the warm flow flowing from the wound to her body made her feel extremely good. Therefore, Gwen had no intention of making Lilin worry and comforted him. It's okay. Lilin. Let's continue to visit. Gwen quickly put this matter aside, and the enhanced modification of Super Spider did not have an immediate effect. With the vitality of Lilin, this transformation will be more profound and gentle, even a relatively long process. When Gwen turned around and prepared to follow the visiting team, Lilin waved towards the distance. The super spider that had just slipped away suddenly returned to his hands unconsciously. And Lilin casually shook the super spider that returned to his hand, and the super spider disappeared into his hand. The disappearance of the super spider was no surprise to Lilin, and it was precisely his means. Not to mention disappearing a spider the size of a finger, even making a living person disappear is just an easy task for him. The essence of Lilin's ability is vitality, and in addition to his identity as a traveler, he also has another identity. The demon god in the dimension of life. This identity is similar to Dormammu, the lord of the dark dimension. After traveling to this world, Lilin is also bound to a dimension space. However, unlike the dark dimension of Dormammu, it is bound to a special dimension filled with life energy, which Lilin calls the dimension of life. Before Lilin, there was no master in the entire dimension of life. Therefore, the first person to discover Lilin here naturally became the master of the dimension of life, and naturally became the demon god of the dimension of life. And the vitality that Lilin can unleash is just a part of the vitality flowing out from the dimension of life. Compared to the almost infinite vitality of the entire dimension of life, the part that Lilin can utilize is just a drop in the ocean. As the owner of an entire dimension, Lilin uses the dimension of life as a temporary warehouse, which is naturally a piece of cake. The super spider was transferred to the dimension of life by Lilin. Chapter 4. Underground Black Doctors Who Can Fight Death. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The visit to the Science and Technology Park ended, and we had a not very sumptuous but very enjoyable lunch together. Watching Gwen's face turn slightly red and his body temperature rise towards an abnormal range, Lilin understood that Gwen's genes had been enhanced by the genes of the super spider and were evolving towards the category of super warriors. Compared to the original super spider, the reinforcement method that almost directly disassembles and violently recombines the genes of ordinary people. Now this change in Gwen is quite mild and harmless. Of course, even if it is mild, it is also a modification and enhancement at the genetic level. Even if the side effects are shared by the vitality, Gwen still needs to suffer a little. Seeing her inadequacy, Lilin chose to send her home directly. Thank you for taking Gwen home, Lilin. As a housewife, Mrs. Helen warmly welcomed Lilin into the house. As the hostess of the Gwen family, Mrs. Helen has a much better sense of Lillian than George, who is the male host. As the police chief, George looked like a wild boar guarding against his own cabbage when he saw Lilin. On the contrary, Mrs. Helen was more like a mother.in.law looking at her son.in.law, and the more she looked at her, the more satisfied she became. According to normal development, after giving birth to Gwen, Mrs. Helen will pass away early due to physical weakness, making Gwen a single-parent child. But in this world, Helen not only did not die, but also lived well, even bringing 2 younger brothers to Gwen. As for why is this happening? Lilin smiled silently. This life demon god didn't speak, which death god dared to snatch people in front of him. The phone rang, and Lilin glanced at the number before answering it. There's business. Time. Location. Compensation. I understand. A few simple words have already explained many issues. Lilin hung up the phone and said goodbye to Mrs. Helen in front of her. I'm sorry, Aunt Helen. The place where I work called me to help, so see you next time. Waving his hand at Helen, Lilin chose to turn around on his motorcycle without saying a word. Looking at Lilin's distant figure, Helen nodded in satisfaction and said, Lilin is such a good child. He has been sharing the expenses for the family and can't wait to see him and Gwen come together now. The matter of working in Lilin is not a secret from Helen or Aunt May. Even today, the Lilin family can have a 2-story house on their own instead of living in an apartment, which is also the money that Lilin transfers to support their household. With extraordinary power, Lilin started making money a long time ago and has even continued to do so until now. Lilin's car was parked in the kitchen of hell, at a craft shop called Sale. However, those who live in the kitchen of hell know that this place is filled with violence, slaughter, and chaos. Not to mention a craft shop, even the most ordinary restaurants and supermarkets cannot survive here. Just collecting protection fees every day, or the thugs who come to pick trouble, is enough to shut down any normal store. And this shop called Feng Fan, which can continue to operate here, clearly has a decent background. There was no one else in the store, only a middle-aged man sitting behind the counter, smoking a pipe, with slightly bald hair, wearing a black jacket. The man held the remote control in one hand and placed the other hand under the counter until he saw clearly that the person entering the store was Lilin, the hand under his counter, and then withdrew it again. Under the counter, next to a loaded shotgun, there were even large weapons like fragmented grenades. This is the way to survive in the Hell's Kitchen, where there is no military support at all, and even survival is unstable. You're here. I've prepared everything for you. As he spoke, the man placed a suitcase directly on the counter from under the counter. Thank you. Old John. Lilin took the glove box and opened it to see a whole set of silver needles inside. Don't thank me, the compensation is also 10% of mine. This time it's a big deal, the consultation fee is only 3 million yuan. Old John can be considered Lilin's agent. When there are clients doing business, he is responsible for introducing and selecting, which also saves Lilin a lot of effort. By the way, this time the client heard that they are old and have organ failure. If you can use your mysterious Eastern medical skills, he may increase the money. Lilin's so-called job is to work as a black doctor with Old John. The so-called black doctors refer to doctors engaged in underground medical tasks, who specialize in providing medical services to special targets. And Lilin is not a doctor, he doesn't even have a medical license. He can become a black doctor purely by relying on his ability as a life demon god. With the blessing of vitality, even a layman who doesn't understand any medical skills can leap to become the top doctor in one fell swoop. However, due to the lack of a medical license, even if he could live to death, it was impossible for him to practice medicine and save people in a regular hospital. Becoming a black doctor became the quickest way for him to earn money. He doesn't need to participate in a fight, he just needs to be responsible for treating diseases and saving people. And with his 100% success rate in every task, now the price of every move made by Lilin is only high, so naturally he has no need to participate in the fight. His external code name is Doctor, and even his appearance is different every time he meets an outsider. Before awakening the biological force field, he relied on self-taught makeup and contouring techniques. And once he possesses the power of a biological force field, he can, like Superman, directly distort his own image in the eyes of outsiders, and even use super hypnosis to modify the other person's memory when necessary. That's why Lillian Parker was able to enjoy a peaceful life like an ordinary high school student. Rose Manor, truly a wealthy area. The people who can sit here are undoubtedly wealthy, and they are also the kind who are very wealthy. Just as they arrived at the entrance of the estate, security personnel stopped Lilin, who was riding a bike. I am a doctor and have been commissioned to consult with Mr. Kong Lien. Lilin said to the security guard, and the security guard would naturally confirm with the employer, quickly confirming Lilin's identity. However, before Lilin entered the estate, he still checked the items he carried as usual to ensure that Lilin was just a doctor and not a killer. Everything else was fine, and Lilin didn't carry anything like firearms, except for the silver needle in his suitcase, which was treated as dangerous goods. It wasn't until Mr. Kong Lien, who was in charge, spoke up that Lilin entered the estate with his belongings. Hello, the legendary doctor who can compete with the Grim Reaper for his soul. Quickly, Lilin met his client this time, an elderly man with graying hair and looking critically ill, stepping into the coffin with one foot. The other person is lying in a survival pod, as if even living is very difficult. But precisely because of this, Lilin felt a stronger desire for survival from him than the average person. He yearns to live, yearns for life. Chapter 5. 3 small targets arrived in one pass. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Kong Lien Connaught, born in the 1920s, experienced World War I in his childhood and World War II in his adulthood, even being of the same generation as Captain Amelia, Howard, and others. After the war, Kong Lien inherited the family's business and grew it stronger. Taking advantage of the period of polarization between the United States and the Soviet Union, he quickly expanded the family business to the world. Nowadays, even though Kong Lien has billions of assets, he still cannot keep him away from aging and death. When young, everyone has youth and vitality, but no one cares about what can be seen everywhere. It is not until old age, when what was once owned, leaves oneself, that one realizes how precious it is to have. Perhaps due to his reckless and extravagant youth, Kang Lian is now only in his 80s, but his body is almost rotten. Even with the most professional medical team and the best medical equipment, he can only maintain a temporary immortality. In his current state, every second he lives is torture. Perhaps it was precisely because of this that he spared no expense in finding Lilin from the hellish kitchen. "Mr. Kang Lian, do you mind if I check your body first?" Kang Lian naturally wouldn't refuse. He asked his attending doctor to compile a book of changes in his past physical data and send it to Lilin. But Lilin couldn't bear to glance at these direct materials. The attending physician of Kang Lian frowned as he watched Lilin's reaction. "Mr. Kang Lian, as your attending physician, I still suggest that you do not believe the flattery of these black doctors. Your body is not suitable for the ravages of these irregular treatment methods." "Rand, attending physician, shut up." Kang Lian in the life support cabin shouted at the attending doctor. Although the tone is harsh, aging and weakness cannot be concealed. "If you have a way to relieve my pain, why should I call a doctor? Since you can't treat me, just look at it." After finishing these words, Kang Lian coughed twice again and looked at Lilin Suizhou. However, Lilin showed no interest in Kang Lian's conversation, and he had no intention of refuting Dr. Rand's questioning. He doesn't look at past body data purely because he's not a regular doctor at all, and the changes in those body data are useless to him. He may not understand traditional Chinese medicine, but by pretending to feel his pulse, he can still learn it like a model. When he pretended to feel his pulse, he had already grasped Kang Lian's physical condition clearly through his vitality. Putting down Kang Lian's hand, Lilin stood up again. "How's it going?" As it concerns his own physical condition, Kang Lian is naturally the first to inquire. Mr. Kang Lian's situation is very bad, his body organs have been on the verge of exhaustion. Although he relies on these survival equipment to survive, it is obvious that the effectiveness of these equipment is already very limited. "I'm afraid the most optimistic situation is to persist for 6 months, and it will be extremely painful and difficult to survive for 6 months. When Lilin came to this conclusion, Dr. Rand, who had previously completely distrusted Lilin's medical skills, immediately showed a ghostly expression. The time given by Lilin is almost the same as the estimated deadline time obtained by Rand and his colleagues after long-term observation of Kang Lian's body. And how did Lilin estimate it? Entering from Lilin, he didn't even glance at those physical data, and then only grabbed Kang Lian's wrist for just 3 minutes. At this moment, Rand became infinitely curious about Lilin and seemed to understand why as an employer, Kang Lian would seek Lilin as an underground doctor. "Lilin, maybe there are really 2 brushes." And Kang Lian was naturally aware of his physical condition. Upon hearing Lilin's accurate conclusion, his cloudy eyes suddenly became a bit brighter, looking at Lilin expectantly. "Doctor, please help me. As long as it can restore my health, whether it's 3 million, 30 million, or 3 billion. Upon hearing Kang Lian's offer, Lilin did not agree at all. Although he has the ability to convince Kang Lian to spend 300 million, it does not mean that he is willing to expose himself too much and put himself in unnecessary trouble. Lilin's identity as a black doctor has not yet revealed much extraordinary power. He is not prepared to expose himself to the National Defense and Logistics Bureau, which has not yet been renamed, just because it is only 300 million yuan. Lilin lowered his head and pondered, looking very difficult to handle. "Can't you also not heal me?" The little hope that Kang Lian had just risen, seeing Lilin's current performance, immediately made his heart rise and fall again. Lilin didn't defend anything, but explained his physical condition to Kang Lian. A normal person's body is like a bucket filled with water, their physical condition is the state of the bucket, and their vitality is the water in the bucket. Qin Yu used a bucket and water to describe the relationship between the body and vitality, and this metaphor is naturally easy to understand. As people grow up, the bucket naturally grows larger and the water in the bucket also rises. However, as people reach adulthood, the bucket's growth approaches its limit and their energy reaches its peak. When the peak is over, the bucket will start to break and the water in the bucket will also flow out. And Mr. Kong Lian, your current body is just a severely damaged wooden bucket, with not much water already available, and now it is almost completely drained. The general treatment method is to pour water into the continuously leaking barrel, but because the barrel is already broken, no matter how much water is poured, it will eventually all flow out. This method treats the symptoms rather than the root cause. Even if it's me, it can at most temporarily restore your health, allowing you to have the same physical condition as 30 years ago and maintain it for about 2.5 to 3 years. And this method is very time-consuming and labor-intensive. The above is a lie. Lilin can not only restore Kong Lian's youthful body, but also make him immortal. However, Kong Lian is not the grandfather of Lilin. Lilin is here to make money, so he naturally does not plan to directly confront Kong Lian. This kind of money can be eaten by him for a lifetime. 300 million, I am willing to exchange 300 million for 3 years' time. As long as you really can restore my health. Kong Lian said so, and Lilin naturally nodded with satisfaction. So he took out the silver needle that old John had prepared before. After disinfection, Lilin injected directly into Kong Lian's body. One shot, Bai Hui. The needle is a silver needle, and the technique is just one word. Fast. What really works is not acupuncture and moxibustion, but the vitality of acupuncture and moxibustion into Kong Lian's body. Second shot, third shot. Lilin lightly flicked the silver needle, and almost all the silver needles that fell on Kong Lian's body trembled like resonance. And Kong Lian, who was pierced, felt no pain at all. Instead, the warm current poured into his body through the silver needle seemed to be completely connected in resonance with the silver needle. Kong Lian could feel that his body was undergoing some kind of change. The vitality of the past seems to be being awakened again under the influence of the silver needle. Chapter 6. How much money to take and how much to do. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Take people's money and help them alleviate disasters. How much money is collected and how much work is done. This is Lilin's style of acting as a doctor in his vest. He never talks about friendship or morality with his clients, and the only intersection between him and his clients is just the compensation they pay. Just like the client Kong Lian this time, who offered 300 million yuan in exchange for Lilin's intervention, Lilin will naturally give him a reward worth this price. As for the lifespan of less than 3 years, how much is it worth? It's not just Lilin's mouth that counts. Lilin has a lot of vitality. He can easily give a person 100 years of life with a snap of his finger. Even if he releases his constraints and infuses a person's vitality from the dimension of life, he can completely create an immortal person. Lilin is willing to sell it for 1 yuan with a 3-year lifespan. Lilin is not willing, that is to give back a golden mountain. Lilin won't even give it a day's lifespan. This is Lilin, the human, who pursues freedom and freedom. To extend Kong Lian's life, Lilin only needs 3 minutes, and even if he takes it seriously, it only takes a clap of his hands. However, in order to make the Yuan Zhong Kong Lian feel that he had spent 300 million yuan worth it, Qin Yu specially extended the entire treatment to half an hour. Of course, it's not that we can't continue to extend it, but Lilin glanced at the time and realized that there was still over an hour left until Parker's dinner. He wasn't planning to miss the opportunity to share dinner with Aunt May. Aunt May doesn't know the truth about working in Lilin, and he doesn't intend to let Aunt May know that Lilin still has such a vest. If he comes home late, he cannot avoid using other lies to embellish today's situation, which will only lead to more lies. Half an hour later, Lilin wiped Kong Lian's body with one hand, and all the silver needles were quickly retracted into his suitcase. The treatment is completed. Mr. Kong Lian, you can get up now. According to the previous agreement, I have brought your body back to its state 30 years ago, increasing your lifespan by 2.5 to 3 years. Your body should remain in its current state until your lifespan ends again. At the moment when Lilin received the needle, the vitality flowed and spread within Kong Lian's body. William, who was originally lying in the survival pod waiting to die slowly, has become much stronger. His face is more than 30 years younger, and even his complexion seems to have returned to the normal rosy luster of a person. If it weren't for witnessing Kong Lian lying in the survival pod with his own eyes, there would have been no doubt that he was still a dying patient not long ago. Upon hearing Lilin's voice, Kong Lianjun sat up from the survival cabin and walked around like an ordinary person without even needing the help of others. Quickly conduct a physical examination for Mr. Kong Lian. The attending doctor saw a miraculous scene and, in surprise, hastily ordered everyone to conduct a physical examination for Kong Lian. Due to the complete equipment, the testing did not take much time. Even if it was only a superficial test, it was enough to verify Kong Lian's physical condition. He really returned to the level of 30 years ago, and his overall health did not seem to be on the verge of death. Sir, your body is amazing. According to cell tests, you should still have a lifespan of 2.5 to 3 years, but your cell activity is like that of a middle-aged person in their 50s, which is simply impossible. Kong Lian doesn't care what doctors say about God or impossible things, he only knows that he has indeed been reborn. Doctor, thank you for giving me a new life. With a reward of 300 million yuan, I will knock down the account you reserved one by one. Kong Lian is not stingy with money. $300 million may sound like a lot, but for his family property, it's just a drop in the bucket and not worth mentioning. Having tasted the beauty of life, Kong Lian naturally became even more greedy. Since Lilin can extend his life by 3 years, he wants to gain more. Kong Lian doesn't mind spending more money, as long as he can live longer, not to mention $300 million, he is willing to spend even 1 billion. However, Lilin did not agree to Kong Lian's request to spend money to buy his life, and he directly admitted. Sir, I am just a doctor, not a god or a devil. I cannot give life to others out of thin air. This is a lie, it is just to help you make more effective use of the remaining life. Using the theory of bucket and water that I mentioned, what I do is repair the bucket so that it doesn't continue to drain the water inside. If you want to continue extending your life, perhaps it would be more practical to inject some fortified serum directly like Captain America, who has been missing for decades. Of course, I doubt it. Mr. Kong Lian, your current body may not be able to withstand that intense strengthening. Lilin shrugged his shoulders. He didn't intend to waste all his time on prolonging life for others. Naturally, he wanted to downplay his role in prolonging Kong Lian's life. The prerequisite for a bucket to withstand filling is that the bucket itself is strong enough. And Kong Lian's body, even after being repaired by Lilin, is actually not comparable to the level of a normal person. Lilin just makes it look similar to normal. Otherwise, Kong Lian wouldn't have only extended his life by 3 years, which is the limit of his current physical condition. After confirming physical recovery, it was confirmed that Lilin's treatment was indeed effective, and soon Kong Lian completed the payment. The account for remittance is a special account managed by Old John. After the remuneration enters this account, Old John will transfer it back to other secret accounts based on specific income sharing. This is also one of the reasons why Lilin collaborated with Old John. This kind of troublesome matter always needs someone to handle it for him, and Old John is his white glove. As for Old John, is he unreliable? This question doesn't need to be answered at all. The other person's life is given by Lilin, and even his life and death are between Lilin's thoughts, so there's no need to worry about loyalty. Riding on his beloved motorcycle, Lilin quickly left Kong Lian's villa and embarked on the journey back. Before entering the city, Lilin seemed to feel something and instinctively looked at the rearview mirror on his motorcycle. He did indeed realize that at some point, a female knight riding a red motorcycle was following behind him. Wearing a helmet, it is not clear what the female knight looks like, but the leather pants on her body and her tattered figure in the leather jacket are enough to prove that the female knight's figure is not inferior to that of a supermodel. The female knight rushed the motorcycle to Lilin's side, honked her horn 3 times, and extended her right fist to Lilin with her thumb pointing upwards. She then flipped her fist and pointed her thumb downwards. This provocation is quite direct. Lilin naturally understood the meaning of the female knight's gesture, and the other party intended to race directly with Lilin. But Lilin is not a wild motorcycle driver, let alone a racing enthusiast, and with half an hour until Parker's dinner, he doesn't have time to talk to a stranger woman. And the most important thing. He smelled the smell of trouble from the female knight in front of him. Lilin gestured his middle finger to the female knight with his backhand, and the next second he accelerated away from the road. As he entered the blind spot of the female knight's vision, in the blink of an eye, he disappeared completely in front of the female knight, both with a person and a motorcycle. Watching the target disappear, the female knight stopped by the roadside and then reported to her superiors through the communicator on her collar. "Director, the contact with the target doctor failed, and the other party shook me off. Perhaps he is a mutant." Chapter 7. Classic Excuses, I Have a Friend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Visit and get the money. This kind of daily life is just a small matter in Lilin's life. As for the female knight who actively entangled herself, Lilin didn't even want to talk to her, and this matter was quickly forgotten by him in the corner of his memory. He, Lillian Parker, is not Spider-Man, let alone a hero. So, he doesn't intend to actively get involved in any trouble. However, Lilin lives in New York, a place where heroes gather and various events emerge endlessly. He can avoid some things for a while, but he can definitely avoid them for a lifetime. Not to mention that the world of manga is already full of crises, and it is uncertain when a crisis of destruction will emerge. One of the more famous ones is a neurotic titan who, over a decade later, created the universal indifferential finger kill for his universal family planning program. Under the 6 infinite gemstones, there is a direct equality of all beings, with 50% random annihilation that almost no one can avoid. Lilin is confident in his own strength, but he cannot guarantee that his strength will be able to withstand the annihilation of 6 infinite gemstones. So it's not for the great goal of humanity, just to hold on to his valued friends and family, and we absolutely cannot let Ba gather all the infinite gems. So Lilin doesn't mind getting stronger, let alone getting the infinite gem in advance to avoid the 6 regrouping. But now that there are still more than a decade left for him, Lilin doesn't need to worry about things that are so far away. The next day, Lilin went to school as usual. Just after finishing a course, Lilin was grabbed by Gwen's arm. "Hey hey hey. Gwen, don't pull, my clothes." Lilin felt the power of Gwen pulling him, which was definitely several times larger than yesterday's she was. This was also the result of Gwen subconsciously holding back his strength. The reinforcement of Super Spider has indeed effectively enhanced Gwen's physique. You should know that the enhancement of Super Spiders is not achieved overnight, but also through the integration of genes into Gwen's body, as well as the imprint of Lilin's life. The life imprint will connect the dimension of life controlled by Lilin, with Lilin's permission. The vitality of the dimension of life will continuously integrate into Gwen's body through the imprint. In this way, under the continuous nourishment of vitality, the genes of the Super Spider will help Gwen become stronger and stronger. Now Gwen is precisely the weakest thing she has ever been since becoming Spider-Woman, and in the future she will only become stronger and stronger. When Gwen pulled Lilin to an empty corner, she looked around like a thief. "What's wrong, Gwen? Do you have anything you want to tell me?" Since seeing Gwen today, she has been showing a wandering and disoriented demeanor, always looking back and forth in everything she does. Compared to her on Peace Day, even acquaintances can sense the difference. And the reason for Gwen's change, which Lilin could guess to some extent, was nothing more than a change in her body. Suddenly gaining power beyond ordinary people, anyone would be worried about gains and losses. Moreover, Gwen also has a father who is a police chief. Influenced by this, he naturally becomes more sensitive to the existence of superpowers. I saw that Gwen was different from his usual straightforwardness. After hesitating for a while, he finally spoke up. Lilin, what do you think of mutants? Lilin, who had already prepared to provide free psychological training for Gwen, was also stunned when he heard Gwen's question and looked at him with some surprise. And when Gwen was stared at by Lilin like this, his face turned crimson and he seemed to admit it to himself. What do you think I'm doing? I'm just curious, just asking. I have a friend. She's quite concerned about this issue. Oh, my friend. Lilin smiled but remained silent. This classic saying of, I have a friend, is understandable, and basically, the friend here is often the speaker himself. Moreover, Lilin also realized that Gwen suddenly asked about the mutant, mostly using the enhanced ability of the super gene she had acquired as the mutant's awakened superpower. Don't laugh. If you keep doing this, I'll be angry, really. Looking at Lilin's smiling face, which seemed to see through his own thoughts, Gwen's pretty face immediately turned even more crimson. He reached out and twisted Lilin's arm, mastering countless girls' techniques for pinching their boyfriends without a teacher. Hiss. Lilin took a cold breath. Of course, this was a disguise, and his physique wouldn't be so easily manipulated, but he still had to give Gwen some face. Alright, I'll give up. Going back to your question just now, what's my opinion on mutants? Well, in summary, it's just 2 words. Trouble. When Lilin uttered the word trouble, Gwen's small face turned pale and visibly deteriorated. As is well known, mutants are a group of people born with genetic mutations. Humans. Lilin's focus is on the word human, but of course, at this moment, Gwen probably doesn't have the heart to pay any attention. They may not have superpowers from birth, but often grow up and during adolescence, due to emotional changes caused by sensitivity, a special gene called the X gene is explicitly activated in their bodies, giving them vastly different abilities. In a broad sense, only those who have awakened the X gene's superpowers can be defined as mutants in society. Looking at Gwen, who was lost in thought, Lilin continued to explain. The reason why I refer to mutants as troublesome is not because I have prejudice against them, but because their awakening methods are very tricky. Because the awakening of mutants often accompanies the onset of puberty, their emotions are often easily out of control. With the awakening of mutant abilities, they are more likely to become anomalies in the eyes of ordinary people. In this way, for ordinary people, they who have just awakened and cannot control their abilities are no different from time bombs. You should also be able to imagine that it feels like the power of flames, because of a sudden excitement that ignites the entire house. The person who awakens the superpower accidentally crushes a person's bone. When they are on home plate with their loved one kiss or even on home plate, Gwen squinted. JPG, the superpower suddenly loses control. How tragic. Because the initial uncontrollability of mutants' abilities, coupled with public opinion's jealousy towards superpowers, has turned mutants into troubles in the eyes of ordinary people. However, this is a case of self-disturbance. According to Professor Charles's theory, more than 80% of humans worldwide have the X gene in their bodies, but most people's X gene is in a recessive, unopened state. Due to the advent of the nuclear energy era and the impact of radiation, the probability of awakening and becoming mutants in the future will increase. You and I may not become mutants, but our descendants may be. Gwen, who was just thinking, suddenly reacted when he heard Lilin say, our descendants, and shyly pounded Lilin's chest. Damn. Who would have offspring with you? Cough. What about becoming a mutant? Let's just forget about it. Compared to completely random mutants awakening, I actually feel that gene enhancement through serum reinforcement, like Captain America's, is more in line with the definition of strength in the minds of the vast majority of people. Gwen, who was originally worried about being a mutant, suddenly remembered yesterday's super spider when Lilin talked about Captain America. Chapter 8. Miss Gwen, you don't want to miss Gwen by mistake. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Gwen was originally worried that he was a mutant, but now, after listening to Lilin's guidance, he suddenly feels closer to Captain America's kind of reinforcement. Thinking of this, Gwen took a deep breath and looked up at Lilin's gaze, gradually becoming firm. Lilin, can I trust you? Upon hearing Gwen's question, Lilin's face immediately showed a brilliant smile. Of course. No matter when, please. Believe me, I won't let you down, Lilin. Upon hearing this, Gwen seemed to have finally made up his mind and mustered up his courage. Lilin, maybe I also have superpowers. Congratulations. Lilin showed no surprise at all, instead applauding and congratulating calmly. Hey. Gwen was shocked by Lilin's reaction. The words he had prepared in his heart were stuck in his throat, and for a moment, he didn't know how to speak. Until she regained her composure, Gwen said solemnly, Lilin, I'm not joking, what I'm saying is true, Yes. Our Miss Gwen has superpowers. Lilin supported Gwen's shoulders, also facing straight, and interrupted her words. But Gwen wanted to say something more when he saw Lilin explain. Our Miss Gwen has been off all day, as if she has lost her soul. Just now, you specifically asked me about my opinion on mutants. What is the most famous thing about mutants? Isn't it just superpowers? Lilin spoke confidently, with a well-founded argument that made Gwen blush. So, is it difficult to draw the conclusion that Gwen has acquired superpowers? Although I also know that the likelihood of you being a mutant is very low, I still want to know. What is your superpower? Although Lilin knew that Gwen would awaken Spider-Man's abilities after being bitten by a super spider, he still pretended to know nothing and asked about Gwen's superpowers. Gwen, who was amazed by Lilin's reasoning ability, couldn't help but admire him and exclaimed, It's truly Lilin. With just this little detail, I guessed the truth. Alright, you keep an eye on it. After speaking, Gwen picked up a tattered mop stick directly from the miscellaneous room in front of Lilin, and easily broke it off in front of Lilin. My strength has grown very strong. When I woke up in the morning, I almost accidentally demolished my room. My body has become stronger, don't look. I'm not talking about being strong. Seeing Lilin staring at his chest, Gwen shyly shook his hand. Also, my reaction has become faster. When the baseball team is training. The high-speed flying baseball looks like a slowed-down video to me. And there's also this. Gwen suddenly jumped up in front of Lilin, jumping straight to the ceiling. But the next second when Gwen's head collided with the ceiling, she flipped over in the air and pressed her hands directly onto the ceiling, her body sticking to the ceiling like glue. Just hanging upside down, looking up at Lilin standing on the ground. Wow. Really, tie pants are spicy. Watching Gwen demonstrate Spider-Man's standard wall absorption ability, Lilin knew that Gwen had perfectly inherited Spider-Man's abilities. The previous increase in strength, speed, physical strength, reaction ability, and so on can also be said to be the result of the strengthening of vitality. But the strengthening of vitality cannot make Gwen act like a spider on the ceiling, which is undoubtedly the ability of a super spider. Accompanied by Lilin's exclamation, Gwen on the ceiling slightly raised the corner of his mouth, which clearly made Lilin exclaim and made Gwen feel a good mood. Lilin, who remained on the ground, blew a whistle at Gwen. Gwen followed Lilin's gaze and his gaze eventually shifted downwards from her face. Ah! Gwen from the exchange didn't care about showing off his superpowers, so he let go of his hands and fell from the ceiling, embracing him with both hands. He said with a hint of shyness, Lilin, Lilin does not deny this. Because of Gwen's carelessness just now, he did indeed see a beautiful scenery. Alright, everything just now was an accident. Besides the ability to climb walls, is there anything else? Returning to the main topic, Gwen also lowered his head to ponder. Well, I seem to have a special intuition, like being able to predict danger, like spider sensing. Yesterday in the science park, it was introduced that in super spiders, there is this ability to predict danger. Lilin shrugged and said the true face of Gwen's ability. Based on your performance just now. Your ability makes you look like a super spider. In fact, yesterday I was bitten by a strange white spider in the science park. I suspect it's the super spider that escaped and disappeared from the park. So, if it's really the power of spiders, have you ever tried spinning silk? Lilin said the word spinning silk and saw Gwen staring at him with wide eyes. Don't look at me that way. When it comes to the ability of spiders, isn't the first thing that comes to mind is the ability to spin silk and make webs? Don't you? Don't you? The process of Gwen acquiring spider abilities is like the process of a bully spider, and it is also the only Spider-Man in the third generation of the movie who can produce his own spider silk. Lilin thought that Gwen's Spider-Man ability also included this ability. But currently, it seems that this is not the case. Gwen shook his head and his face was full of surprise. Lilin, what are you thinking? I just gained superpowers, and I didn't really become a spider. Upon hearing Lilin here, she looked at Gwen with a slight headache. If Gwen cannot generate spider silk on her own, it means that in order to become Spider-Man, she must create a spider web launcher. Of course, the spider web launcher is not difficult, the most difficult thing should be the recipe for spider silk. Although Gwen's grades are not bad, they are not the kind of high-tech fanfiction. As a bassist in a college band, her future development direction is not like pursuing scientific research, but more like going into the entertainment industry. So Lilin was very skeptical that Gwen, a newcomer to Spider-Man, really had the ability to independently develop spider silk and web launchers. Cough. Gwen, although congratulations on obtaining superpowers, no matter what you plan to do with this ability, I think you need to exercise and master it. Speaking of which, Lilin grabbed Gwen's hand and placed it on his chest. Gwen, you don't want to accidentally kill someone just because you can't control your strength, do you? Chapter 9. Phantom Spider, debuting in the hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the following week, Lilin and Gwen built a temporary base directly at the abandoned warehouse at the port, serving as Gwen's training ground to adapt to this superpower. The most troublesome aspect of sudden acquisition of superpowers like Gwen is adaptation and control. Thanks to Lilin's use of vitality, control of the genes of the super spider, and violent modification of Gwen's body, this reinforcement process has slowed down significantly. Otherwise, the surging power of Gwen would only be more prominent than it is now. At that time, it was difficult for Gwen to leave home safely, not to mention going to school safely. Now, Lilin directly transports Gwen to and from school, trying to avoid him from experiencing emotional outbursts as much as possible, so that he can live a normal life without being noticed by his family until Gwen fully grasps his surging power. Bang! A 20-kilogram boxing sandbag was hit with a heavy punch. Under the tremendous impact, the sandbag unhooked and flew up like a shell, ultimately landing on the ground more than 20 meters away. Hee hee. Looking at his masterpiece, Gwen, who had been trained to sweat all over, seemed to be quite proud and showed a satisfied smile. Pop. The paper fan landed steadily on Gwen's head. You're still laughing. This is your third sandbag, even if it's not expensive, it can't withstand such a fuss. As Gwen's training coach, Lilin clearly couldn't stand Gwen's recent arrogance and poured a bucket of cold water on her. Training also requires money. Although Lilin supports Gwen's training to control her own strength, it is obvious that she will not directly throw a lot of money at her. Although men become bad when they have money, it is not necessarily a good thing for women to have money. In order to allow Gwen to experience the virtues of hard work and simplicity, Lilin allocated half of the training costs to Gwen. Therefore, after just over a week of training, Gwen's pocket money has already run out. Although Gwen's father is the director of the New York Police Department, Gwen doesn't have much pocket money on a daily basis. Moreover, she is a young girl who plays music, so she spends more money. Naturally, the pocket money she can save is not much. If it weren't for Lilin sharing the majority of the expenses during the 1-week training, Gwen's economy would have declared bankruptcy. Nowadays, Gwen, not to mention directly becoming a qualified superhero, at least she won't accidentally kill someone due to lack of control, as Lilin was worried. And Gwen seems to be born with the talent to be a hero, and during his training period, he encounters various troubles every now and then. She either encountered a bag robbery on the road, or occasionally encountered a robbery in the way, and even once, she directly encountered a bank robbery. The physique of events happening wherever they go seems to be the essence of superheroes. And because his father is the police chief at home, Gwen is naturally a girl with a strong sense of justice. If she had no ability before, perhaps she could only stand by silently praying, but now that she has the strength, she naturally cannot sit idly by. However, Gwen's combat experience may not be sufficient, but her overall quality, which is 10 times higher than that of an ordinary person, is enough to form a crushing victory. If she didn't use some strength with a casual punch, she might have been able to send off an ordinary person on the spot. Hissing. Painful, painful. In the secret base of Gwen and Lilin, Lilin is using wound medicine to apply medicine to Gwen, while Gwen, who had previously shown great power, is now grinning and shouting pain due to the piercing pain of his wound. Lilin poked Gwen's eyebrows angrily. Well, who let you rush forward rashly? Do you really think that you can do anything with your super ability? Gwen, your ability has not fully awakened, and you are not invulnerable to bullets. You will also die if you rush into the forest of bullets. Next time, you can grow dim sum. With Gwen's physique and the transmission of vitality brought by the imprint of the dimension of life, even without medication, this injury on Gwen's body can automatically heal in a day. However, it is obvious that Gwen is not aware of this now. And Gwen, who had just shouted in pain, stared at Lilin with bright eyes and said, "I know you're worried about me, Lilin." Seeing Lilin's worried expression, Gwen couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. He then hugged Lilin's neck and sat directly on his lap. But if everyone just hopes for the arrival of heroes and no one takes practical action, who can be saved? Since I have this superpower, don't waste this power. I will protect everyone, and also protect you. Perhaps Gwen has not heard the classic saying, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility, but at this moment, Gwen already has a heroic heart, but her heroic heart is still slightly immature. Okay. Since it was Gwen's choice, of course I will always stand by your side. Lilin also hugged Gwen's waist, feeling the breath and warmth of the beautiful woman in her arms. To support you, Gwen. I have prepared something good for you. Lilin put down Gwen in his arms, walked over to the side, took out a suitcase, and opened it in front of Gwen. Gwen seemed curious about what Lilin had prepared and stared at the glove box with wide eyes. After the glove box was opened, the contents inside were revealed, clearly consisting of a piece of clothing and a wristband. Gwen, this is your battle suit. Mainly made of white with black as a supplement, made of special biofibers that can be compressed into extremely small containers, possessing impressive defensive power. Small and medium-sized firearms bullets cannot penetrate, providing good protection against high and low temperatures, making you safer when fighting for justice. The so-called biological fibers, also known as the spider silk spit out by the super spider, transformed into a tool spider for the material of this battle suit. During these days, the super spider has been working overtime to spin silk, and almost died from overwork. Then Lilin took out the bracelet on the side and showed it to Gwen in person. This is a spider web launcher, like this. As Lilin pressed the mechanism, a white spider silk shot out and suddenly stuck to the wall 10 meters away. Spider webs have excellent stickiness and can adhere to the vast majority of materials. You can rely on spider webs to move between buildings, or use them to assist in battles and catch criminals. But don't get too excited, the amount of spider web bullets is limited. Remember to pay attention to this during battles. Gwen himself is not a scientific research talent, so Lilin will become the man behind Spider-Woman, and the Spider-Man of this universe will also be born smoothly. After reading the 2 pieces of equipment, Gwen's eyes were already lit up and he was so excited that he hugged Lilin, unable to resist a deep kiss on his cheek. I love you so much, my great inventor. You are really my best partner. Just a partner. Looking at the excited Gwen, Lilin smiled and asked in response. Also my favorite, whispering person. Facing Lilin, Gwen seems particularly shy. Gwen, who picked up his battle suit, immediately asked Lilin, what hero name should I call? Spider-Man or something that sounds too ugly, is it Spider-Man? Perhaps you would like the name, Ghost Spider, Spider-Woman. Chapter 10. The New York Temple That Cannot Be Avoided. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gwen, the Ghost Spider, has officially debuted as a superhero. Of course, compared to the kind of hero who saves the world, Gwen, who has just debuted, is still limited to fighting crime on the streets. Even as a student, it is difficult to see her during the day. On the contrary, she often appears in active scenes on the streets at night. And for Gwen, this is precisely a good opportunity. Fighting street criminals is much simpler than fighting super criminals. By engaging in battles with enemies of simple difficulty, she continuously accumulates experience as a superhero, so that she can go further on the path of superhero than others. If done well, it will naturally bring both fame and fortune, but if not done well, it will naturally lead to a dead end. But with Lilin covering it, let alone how safe Gwen is in the entire universe. At the very least, on this acre of land on Earth, it is difficult for her to encounter life-threatening situations. In this place on Earth, it is not easy for Lilin, the Dimension Demon God, to protect someone. But if we enter the era of superheroes with frequent major events in the future, his weight as a dimensional demon god may not be enough. So whether it's for himself or for future friends and family, becoming stronger is a long-term and unstoppable process. In the Marvel world, there are countless ways to become stronger, but there are not many methods suitable for Lilin. He himself belongs to the magical side, and the power of the life dimension can be considered a type of magical superpower. As long as he develops it step by step, theoretically reaching the level of a single universe is more than enough. Even Lilin had a feeling that his dimension of life was not as simple as a single universe, and could even become part of the concept of a multiverse. But this part of the power is too immense, and Lilin is still too young today. Compared to the lifespan of other dimensional demons that can easily last for thousands of years, Lilin, who is still underage, has just embarked on the one-way path of his long life. Compared to dimension development, the quickest way for Lilin to become stronger is naturally to use cheats. Having obtained 1 or 2 divine tools, his strength can completely soar to the sky. Even without the need for artifact-level treasures, even if it's just 1 or 2 magical tools, it's enough to greatly increase Lilin's strength. When it comes to magic tools, what can you think of? Of course, it's the Mage of Taj and the various magical tools they possess. As early as when Lilin confirmed that his world was located in the Marvel Universe, in order to gain the power of self-protection, he thought about learning magic as a path. Magic, like technology, is very talented. However, technology is even more difficult than magic. In addition to requiring genius brains like Iron Man, Mr. Magic, and the Hulk banner, success also relies on financial support like Iron Man, and various research costs one by one. So from the beginning, Lilin gave up on the path of stubbornly pursuing technology, not only because he himself may not have such talent, but also because he didn't have the capital to invest in the big pit of technology. Compared to magic, it is quite approachable. Like Doctor Strange and Mage King, both poor and unable to afford pizza, they can still become masters of magic. In terms of magic, one only relies on natural talent, and compared to this, the demand for resources is not as severe as technology. Of course, magic under the Marvel system is essentially like sacrificing a demon god to exchange energy. Whether it is white magic or black magic, casting it requires a price, and the difference is only the level of the price. If Lilin is studying magic, he has an advantage over others in the sky. As a dimensional demon god, he is backed by a dimension of life with endless vitality. In other words, he can almost obtain endless energy at no cost, and casting magic at almost no cost. Due to the advantage of this identity, Lilin once had the intention to go to Kamatage to learn magic. Of course, compared to whether he could learn magic, he was initially afraid that his dimension of demon god would be liquidated by the Supreme Mage. But until he was 10 years old, he did not see the Supreme Master appear in front of him, and he assumed his existence as the Supreme Master. This led to the idea that Lilin wanted to study magic at the Kamatage, and even went to search for the New York Temple at 177A, Black Street more than once. But over the years, Lilin never found that place again, to the point where Qin Yu suspected the existence of the New York Temple. If it really exists, he hasn't found it for so many years. He must be the Supreme Master, be careful not to be found by him. Even though the New York Temple had not appeared in front of him for so many years, Lilin still tirelessly searched for it. Even once a week, there would be a day dedicated to wandering on Black Street, waiting for one day when he opened his eyes and saw the New York Temple appear in front of him. In the New York Temple that Lilin longed for, the Temple Guardian Mage respectfully bowed to the yellow-robed mage beside him. "Teacher Gu-yi, how long will we continue to avoid him like this?" The main entrance of the temple is tightly closed, but the wall in front of the guardian mages and others appears transparent, allowing the mages present to easily see what is happening on Black Street at this moment. Of course, one can also clearly see the Lilin waiting for rabbits on the street at this moment. In fact, many mages present have a deep impression of Lilin. Over the years, Lilin has come to this street without any obstacles, and they have seen him more or less than 100 times. The female version of Supreme Master Koichi, dressed in a yellow robe, also stared at Lilin not far away inside, "Avoid as long as you can. At least let's not meet him until the next Supreme Master sets off a wave of multiverse." Koichi naturally knew about Lilin, and even knew about his existence earlier than Lilin had anticipated. Who made Lilin the natural master of the dimension of life? When he first arrived in this world, as the top leader in the magic world, Koichi was the first to notice his existence. Even Gu-yi once suspected that the existence of Lilin was a conspiracy of a certain dimension demon god. Of course, this ultimate scoundrel who indulged in the power of Dormammu for free had also considered taking the power of the dimension of life from Lilin. In front of Gu-yi, who possesses a time gem and can glimpse future development, she has too many opportunities to explore the possibilities of the future. But over the years, Gu-yi has maintained the principle of no contact or communication with Lilin, which has already explained many issues and attitudes. Among the millions of possibilities she glimpsed, the possibility derived from the intersection with Lilin was definitely not a friendly future for her, the Supreme Mage who wanted to retire. Even among them, almost all the future that Lilin had taken action against was doomed, and there was a 90% chance that the future that intersected with Lilin in advance would usher in the multiverse era, and their world would welcome various ghosts and snakes. Her retirement as the Supreme Mage was repeatedly delayed. Gu-yi, who is well aware of the possibilities for the future, is like avoiding the god of plague. He has been avoiding the forest for so many years.